Good afternoon. On behalf of Engineers Australia, I'm delighted to welcome you all to the Industry Partnership Series, AI Strategies for Risk Management and Project Delivery. In keeping with our custom, Engineers Australia acknowledges the First Nations people as the original inhabitants and traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia. We recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community, and we pay our respects to all elders, past, present and emerging. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that today's event is being hosted with Engineers Australia's industry partner, Oracle. Asset owners and project leaders rely on Oracle construction and engineering solutions for the visibility and control, connected supply chain, and data security needed to drive performance and mitigate risk across their processes, projects, and organisation. Their scalable cloud construction management software solutions enable digital transformation for teams that plan, build, and operate critical assets, improving efficiency, collaboration, and change control across the project lifecycle. Today's session will feature a panel discussion of 3 presenters, which will be moderated by Roger Rolving, Customer and Industry Value Engagement Director at Oracle. After the panel discussion, we will have a live audience Q&A, and I encourage you to send questions through to our speakers via the YouTube chat box. Please welcome Roger Rolving.
Thank you, Amanda. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for Engineers Australia's webinar, Enhancing Project Delivery and Risk Management with AI, Practical Strategies for Today's Practitioners. As Amanda said, I'm Roger Rolving, and it's a privilege and an honor to moderate this conversation. The construction and engineering industries are at a decisive crossroads, faced with increased complex, high-value projects and a rapid shift towards digital engineering. Today, we explore not just what the future might hold, but how AI is already being developed in real-world construction environments to drive better outcomes. Today's session will unpack tangible strategies and lessons for leveraging AI on your projects, with an emphasis on maximizing value from your data and streamlining collaboration between all project participants. Our expert panel brings diverse perspectives, spanning risk management, digital delivery, infrastructure strategy, and data analytics, and will demystify the practicalities of integrating predictive analytics, machine learning, and automated reporting into daily construction workflows. Before we dive in, it is important to understand and distinguish or define what we mean when we say AI. Recognizing that foundational AI forms such as statistical scheduling and early automation have been part of the industry for over a decade already. Today's AI is moving towards more autonomous and integrated systems, transforming the way organizations deliver complex infrastructure and manage portfolios at scale. So let's use 2 basic AI descriptions/definitions for today's conversation. AI in construction engineering, large language model based, individual productivity focused. AI in construction, when centered on LLMs, refer to the use of advanced language processing algorithms to assist individuals in their daily roles. This includes automating document drafts, for example, generating reports, answering technical queries, and streamlining communication. By deploying these large language models, or LLMs, construction professionals can enhance personal productivity, reduce manual workloads, and access prompt, context-aware support tailored to industry-specific tasks. The other definition we'd like to use today is AI in construction engineering at a corporate, industry, and project level. AI in construction engineering at the corporate and project level involves the use of advanced analytics, machine learning, and predictive modeling to process vast amounts of project and operational data. This approach delivers actionable insights, automates routine decisions, and generates accurate forecasts on cost, schedule, risk, and resource optimization. Increasingly, or at least actively working towards doing so in the near real time. As we move through the discussion, consider how themes like data quality, integration, and change management apply. Our aim for you is for you to leave the session with actionable knowledge, where to start, what barriers to anticipate, and how to realize measurable benefits from AI, regardless of your organization's current digital maturity. I'm therefore delighted to be joined on this panel in alphabetical order by Pedram Daneshmand, Executive Director, KPMG Australia, and Chair of the Risk Society. Pedram is one of our great deep thinkers of integrated project controls, PMO, project assurance, and risk engineering. He's the key author of the Risk Engineering Society Contingency Guideline and a seasonal lecturer of integrated project controls and risk management at Western Sydney University and UTS. Next is David Dubois, Executive Director, Infrastructure Portfolio Performance and Digitalization at Infrastructure New South Wales. David is an established infrastructure specialist and digital transformation leader. He's a change maker in Infrastructure New South Wales, spearheading the digital transformation of the infrastructure sector. David also leads the annual publication of the Trends and Insights Report, providing critical insight across the New South Wales infrastructure program. Next up is Ben van Deventer, leading data strategy and insights with Infrastructure Australia. Dr. Ben's accolades include, amongst many others, digital transformation, advanced analytics, infrastructure, and project management. Following his natural curiosity about what makes the world tick has led Ben into a broad and diverse career working on minute detail and supporting development of national economic policy. And last but certainly not least, Hester de Wet, Principal Growth and Client Director at Oricon. Hester is known for leading high-performing multidisciplinary teams and navigating complex investment, technical, operational, and commercial risks across the global market. Starting professional life as an electrical engineer, Hester has since worked across multiple global industries, progressing over time into technical management and market-shaping roles. You will all agree, a hugely qualified panel of beautiful and intelligent people plus me. Whilst I have some excellent questions lined up for you and for our panelists, to shape this conversation, I ask you to use the Oracle chat box or comment box to ask your questions. Please clearly state your name, your question, and who it's for. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, panelists. Let's start with maybe an easy one for all of you, and I'll go around my screen to give you a chance to answer it. So, heads up, Pedram, you're going to be first. So, question one, what are some tangible ways that AI is being used on construction sites today? Pedram?
Thanks, Roger, and hi everyone. For the people joining us across the world, and also the panel members, it's actually a pleasure to be a part of the panel. It's an interesting question, but what I would like to highlight is that the current AI tools that we do see currently being used consistently focus on three areas. The predictive analytics, and this is mainly from a schedule perspective, from a cost perspective, or risk emergence. Early warning system, areas like safety and progress measurement, etc., and some of the augmented expert judgment. The other point that I would like to highlight, and maybe is a good one to start the conversation, and I'd love to hear from other panel members, is that when we discuss about the construction, this is not just the delivery phase. This is the journey of construction starts quite significantly earlier. So from earlier stage of initiation, bringing the concept, going through the prelim business case, final business case, procurement, all through the delivery phase and handover. So the risk tools and techniques and AI is getting across all those phases. And as I said, I can mention a few examples, like we see the AI being used for early warning, preparing the risk register at the earliest stage. During the design, we do see AI applications in measuring the changes, contract during the procurement, checking the obligation extraction, the bid comparison summaries between different tenderers. And as we get to the delivery phase, there is a progress measurement, safety analytics, like automated reporting, and so on and so on. And then as the project gets to the handover and practical completion, again, a number of examples like verification and so on and so on. So it's quite a wide range of applications currently being used for construction projects throughout the life cycle.
Thank you, Pedram. David, your thoughts on what are some tangible ways that AI is being used in construction sites today?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good to be on the panel. Yeah, I think Pedram covered a lot of the use cases, but I think at the moment, there's really a foundational opportunity around information mining, which adds to the use cases. We all deal with a lot of data across project life cycles, and AI is really uplifting productivity in this space. And so there are data and research that says we lose up to 3, 4, 5 hours a week looking for the information we need. And Gen AI and large language models are playing a key role in that space. I think in the future as well, AI will be proper data governance will be a key enabler for modern methods of construction, robotics. So we haven't really seen a lot of that in the Australian market yet. We see pocket of that, and AI will definitely accelerate some of those modern methods of constructions as well. So this is adding a little bit to what Pedram already highlighted, and maybe a couple of years down the track.
Thank you, David. Anything you'd like to add, Ben?
No, just agree with what David and Pedram have already said. So I'd second that, or third that rather. AI really isn't laying concrete on site. It's no replacement for site labor, but absolutely, it's being used to digest a vast amount of information and to help translate that into insights. Perhaps it's not as obvious sometimes at kind of like the system level as what we might like to see in the future. But that doesn't mean that there aren't little wins along the way at the site level. People are using large language models to help them with small tasks. Fundamentally, I think there's quite a tangible use in terms of processing the very vast amount of data that is being bombarded, I'm going to say, to people on site. I'm sure many of the audience can relate to just how difficult sometimes that can be.
Thanks, Ben. And Hester, how do you see AI being used today in construction projects?
Thanks for the opportunity, and hi, everybody. Great to be part of this session today. Such an interesting topic for all of us. Building on what my fellow panel members have said there, I think one of the key things that we try and do with AI is very much support our clients de-risk, not only, and like Pedram said, it's construction, not just when it actually starts building on site, but also how we help our clients de-risk before we get actually onto site. So some of the tools that we are rolling out is very much looking at making better decisions during concept design. And then, as David said, that productivity piece is how do we help our teams as well as our project teams actually find the right information to turn around queries, easier to understand what decisions has been made, especially in large multi-year projects. It's very important for us to actually use the information well. And like Ben says, it's sometimes those small wins that actually has a big value if you add them up over the life of a project.
Thank you, Hester. And I might just stay with yourself for picking up on what you just said, picking up a customer or projects and de-risking them right from as early as you can for your customers. From what you see happening today, then, how are those traditional project management workflows being adopted to leverage these AI and new insights that gives?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think if we look at some of the general tools that most of us have available to ourselves in the business, there's been some really easy wins based on, tools that can capture minutes of meeting for us, tools that if you provide the template, can actually then the notes that was captured also fill that in. So those are small time savings that actually add up to a lot. One of the great things that we've created for ourselves is to implement on our projects, actually to help decode requests for information, so RFIs, throughout the delivery of a project. Anybody who's done a large project knows that you get RFIs, and they at the start of the project is quite easily to match. Yes, this query was linked to that requirement. This is how we answered it, or this query relates to that standard in the client and this part of the requirement for the project. The tool that we've got that we call Clarify actually allows us to both in that ecosystem pull together what's been answered before. We link in the client standard, we link in the project scope and requirements, enabling our teams to answer those queries and link it back to what the right requirement is and what's expected during design in a much more quicker and accurate manner. So it's a fantastic way where, if you think about some of those key tricky things that we've got on our projects, how do we solve them with the tools that's available to us to continue to develop on how we actually make sure that we build on trust and accuracy, but help our customers turn around queries a lot quicker, and in that way shorten the delivery of a project.
Thank you, Esther. And I think it brings us back to a point that I think David was making earlier about the data quality. So maybe another question to the whole panel, but we start with you, David, because I think it came from you. How does the data quality impact the effectiveness of AI in project controls and maybe risk management specifically, as we're talking about that today?
Thanks. Yeah, it's obviously critical. I think in the past, when we used advanced analytics, for example, if you had data issues or you had missing data, it was a lot more obvious. Whereas now with AI, there's hallucination coming into play. You might get a response anyway, even if the data is not there in the first place. That creates an additional risk. But something worth highlighting as well is that AI is not necessarily just highlighting the data quality issues. It is also part of the solution potentially. I think there's a big opportunity for data quality to be improved through AI. And so that hopefully helps us on our maturity curve as well as we progress.
Thanks, David. And I see Ben nodding vigorously, so I'm going to throw it over to Ben then. Same question: how does the data quality impact the effectiveness of AI in project controls and risk management?
I'm in furious agreement, as you can tell by my nodding. AI, just like any other tool that we use, is not immune to the junk in, junk out philosophy. So that fundamental of having high quality data for it to reference is inescapable. And David is spot on. You don't always know that your reference information or reference data is junk when using large language models. So absolutely second that. AI strength is working at scale. But really you need to make sure that your house is on order to make sure that reference data is clean. And by clean, I mean, the basics of it's structured in an understandable way. The provenance is clear. The ownership is clear. Ultimately, that's the way that you can build the confidence in your outputs, build your trustworthiness in those outputs. And I second what David said. Just because LLMs are susceptible to junk in, junk out, doesn't mean that there isn't a role in using LLMs to help clean some of that data. So absolutely second that as an opportunity to help expedite getting your house in order.
Thanks, Ben. Has there anything you'd like to add about the data quality and the importance thereof?
Yeah, no, I think Ben covered it really well there. For us, to use these systems and this technology, a lot of it comes down to trust. I know there was a very interesting quote that, or not a quote, article that mentioned engineers specifically did not trust AI because it asked it to create a bicycle with square wheels, and the machine couldn't do that. Of course, these tools develop at such a scale and actually becomes much more useful for us just, week after week, that if the data that it is training on isn't quite accurate, obviously, sometimes it will not give us the right response. I think the key thing for us to remember here is where to use the tools, how to use that output, how to check the output so that we continue to produce really high quality, trustable outputs based on whatever these tools can create for us.
Thank you, Hassan. And Pedram, over to you. Anything you'd like to add?
Probably a little. I mean, I think everyone covered that. What I would like to highlight is that I'm assuming a lot of our audience today, they're coming from a risk management perspective. I mean, there is no argument, obviously, as all the panel members highlighted in terms of the importance of the data quality. However, in our experience, from a risk management, specifically for project risk management, the data quality seems currently is not a blocker. The governance and integration are. And what I mean by that is that maybe just share a quick example with everyone is that most recently we had a major, huge expansion project on an existing asset. So putting a tower, in a simple, very simple, without going into too much detail, putting a tower on top of existing asset, which was operational. And after the schedule was developed by the team, the AI tool was used to assess the quality of the schedule and the constructability and logic and so on. And the result came out that is very comprehensive. The schedule is high quality. However, as Hester highlighted, the steps after that was that we said, no, let's go to the details. Within a day review of the assumptions that the AI tool undertook, we had a number of issues, like, for example, the wind, that you may not be able to operate it because it's the tower crane because of the operation. There is interfaces with this department and so on and so on. Within a day conversation on the drivers, we moved a schedule from a reasonable schedule for this project. We got to the point that the confidence level of this schedule is probably around 20-30%. And this is I think it's a fantastic example that they said, look, eventually, especially in the current environment, we don't have a lot of data. So we're using some of the tools that the data is already available. So we cannot check the quality of the data. The blocker at the moment, in our experience, is the governance and integration, how to validate them, what's the process to test them, and then making sure that there is no perfect data, how we want to manage that.
Thanks, Pedram. And while I've got you, and while you started talking about the use of AI in projects, based on your experience in risk management, and how has the adoption of AI tool changed the way risks are identified and addressed on major projects, or has it?
Thanks, Roger. I think it has. What I would like to highlight is that I wish I could say that everything is positive, right? But let me start with the positive side, and then I'll love to hear everyone's view on that. Look, AI has made the risk identification earlier, more objective and more continuous, that's for sure. I mean, there's a number of packages, even some of the very publicly available, the common tools that you can jump in, you can put your instead of just relying on the risk workshops or follow up with a few experts, definitely, or monthly workshops and expert opinion, AI analyzes. You can prepare the risk workshop, productivity data, change pattern in real time. So these are all positive impacts that help surfacing the emerging risks sooner. Is another area that we do see it quite positively is that optimism bias. The tools currently being used, or we have seen successful use of the tools to minimize the optimism bias, or maybe cognitive biases, I should say, and mainly optimism bias, but actually is wider than just optimism. And also the quality of the risk conversations that we do see across the owners, contractors, and consultants. The other point that before share some of the negative side or a little bit less positive side is that in the construction, especially in Australia and globally, the type of the contract or collaborative type of the contract is increasing. And some of the AI tools that we do see, they're impacting and improving the quality of risk conversation between all those parties, which is quite fantastic and it's quite positive. Very briefly, like anything else, there are some negative, right? Side. We have seen some examples that AI can or could create the false confidence or mistrust. As I said, the example that I just highlighted, the schedule was quite high confidence. Very quickly, we realized that this is not the case. The other challenge that sometimes happen if the teams don't understand how the AI recommendations are generated or when the outputs are used to place rather than support decision making, it can increase the defensiveness and reduce the collaboration. And again, similar issues that we had initially when the collaborative contract like alliance came or competitive alliance came, it caused the culture of the team to drive some negative. So it's important to identify both those two areas. AI is powerful, but without transparency and clear accountability, it can actually weaken the trust rather than improve it.
Thank you, Pedram. Anybody want to add anything to that, or shall we just move on?
I'm happy to add a point. I think the trust component is absolutely critical. We've observed that as well with some of our trials where you just need one advice or one piece of output which is incorrect to erode that trust and for people to challenge the whole AI opportunity. And so I think one of the things we've emphasized is the education and the change management that goes with AI adoption. And so making sure that our people and our staff knows how to use AI, what not to use AI for. And we nearly have a policy not to just copy paste content and replace decision making. It is just a tool to help us get the information or the products we need quicker. But there's always the human in the loop. There is always the critical thinking that comes with it, and it needs to elevate the human contribution, not replace that critical thinking and due diligence. And that's how I think through that education and communication, we're trying to protect the trust in the use of AI.
Thanks, David. And it's an interesting that you picked up on the trust, but I also like that you said just then it needs to elevate the human contribution, not replace the human contribution. Elevate what we do, use our intelligence that we have to do more creative, additive, high value thinking, and keep using the AI for maybe the more menial task or as a tool to help us achieve those things quicker and faster. So thanks for that. Just picking up on that, and again to the whole panel, and we'll start with Ben on this. Like, what is the impact then on AI? Because in my intro, I said it helps in collaboration. What's the impact on collaboration between owners of a project, contractors, and the various consultants on those kind of projects, large projects? You work on a lot of large projects or see a lot of large projects. How is that AI helping and impacting the collaboration?
Sure. And I suppose I'm just going to take a step back and just set the context of what Infrastructure Australia actually does. Because you did make a fantastic little correction there that we have seen a lot of large projects rather than delivered that. IA, Infrastructure Australia, we're the Australian government's independent advisor on infrastructure projects. Our core remit is surrounding project evaluation, prioritisation. We just published our 2026 infrastructure priority list, little prod there for our latest publication, but also long-term planning. And our focus is on evidence, data, policy settings, etc., ultimately to improve decision-making across project life cycles. So while we don't deliver projects, we do look at things from a systematic perspective, a whole of system perspective. If I do speak about anything to do with delivery, that does draw on my own personal experience prior to joining IA. So with all that said, IA did actually publish something quite relevant back in 2022 around the importance of collaboration and data sharing. And that was in our delivering outcomes roadmap. So that was well and truly before the current large language model epoch. We stated that collaboration improves when teams operate within shared access to data, common systems, and one version of the truth across the owner, contractor, and consultant team. That was 4 years ago, and I think so much has changed, but that fundamental position still holds true. So AI, large language models, can help digest complexity into insight, but it does work best when we are, as a team, working towards or on the same underlying information source. So sharing of information as much as possible does help the relationship and to drive, I'm going to say, more efficient decision making and delivery.
Thanks, Ben. And you certainly keep us on our toes between Infrastructure Australia, IA, and Artificial Intelligence, AI, in the same sentence. Thanks for that.
Yes, we certainly trip it up ourselves all the time. Don't worry.
Hester, you lead cross project teams and everything like that. From your perspective, what is the impact of AI on collaboration between owners, contractors, and consultants?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, if we, I like the way they've been started. If we bring it back to basics, why do we use technology in our everyday work lives? And it really comes down to making sure that it helps us to actually deliver a better service to our clients. It makes sure that we've got a better quality work product, that we make better decisions, that we've got less risk. And where possible, we also focus that on actually making sure that the assets that we create over the life of the asset is a better product. One of the awesome things that I've seen happen is where we work within collaboratively with our customers, where they are looking at developing really large projects, is seeing how we can bring together or make decisions earlier in a project based on some of the scenarios that we can run using these tools. An example where we worked with a client that was looking to develop a very long, large transmission line. Now, these towers have got very big foundations. And so we used an AI-powered tool that would run scenarios for us along the route of the transmission line to determine where there were high-risk areas where that specific foundation would not work, either on the topology of the land where it was planned to be, or it might be that it was near a sensitive area as far as the environment was concerned. But we also did that way earlier in the project than what you would usually do, which allows the client to actually make better decisions upfront, de-risking the project delivery phase. So it's very much geared towards how can we use these tools so that it does help us to deliver better, but make decisions earlier for a better outcome, not just for during project delivery, but over the whole life of the asset.
Thanks, Hester. Pedram, what about yourself then? AI on collaboration. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I agree with everything. Hester, I love that example, which is quite fantastic case study. Look, what I can add is that, especially for, as I noted earlier, the number of collaborative type of contract is increasing, and it might be through a delivery partner, it might be through incentivized type of the contract. So all those new type of the contract, the AI can significantly improve the collaboration, and by creating a shared objective view of the project reality and so on. What I would like to highlight is that, again, on the risk side of it, considering that I can't get rid of positive and negative, that's my mindset. From a risk perspective, AI can undermine the collaboration as well. If it becomes a black box, like if you just relying it 100% and just try to use it, it may stop the collaboration. We have seen some examples that AI has been used as a tool for control or tool of control. And that's not really helpful. When the AI insights are not transparent or are perceived as being used to monitor or challenge parties rather than supporting decisions, it can increase the defensiveness and the contractual tension, especially in those areas, that those contracts that the collaboration is part of the contract. And if you don't set it up culture right, it might impact the performance significantly. So again, in our experience, without the clear governance and agreed use cases, AI outputs may be mistrusted and resisted, reducing the collaboration rather than improving that. So it's a word of cautious that, yeah, I noticed some of the questions coming through the live that we will get into them later today. But it's quite important to understand what sort of objectives. Sometimes it's better to step back and target very specific areas for improvement rather than just trying to make everything AI friendly.
Thank you, Pedram, for that. Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma, and without putting words in your mouth there, from what I heard you say, that is, if you make AI the center of the collaboration, it's unlikely to be a fruitful one. However, if you use AI to, contribute and augment the collaboration process, but fundamentally keep the humans in the loop like we've used before and at the center of the collaboration, we have a greater chance of success. Anything else you'd like to add there, David, from a perspective of large infrastructure projects, which is obviously your daily bread?
Yeah, I would second what Esther said. I think the opportunity in terms of collaboration really is huge in early identification of interfaces, interdependencies, requirements from the various stakeholders along the project lifecycle, and getting these requirements into the thinking earlier is really a massive opportunity. We see a lot of projects go off track because some of those late stage requirements haven't been captured properly or thought through, and then it eventuates into rework and variations. And so I can see a massive opportunity for risk avoidance through greater identification of subsequent requirements, stakeholder requirements. And that can be, people, legal, regulatory requirements that are evolving, and all the above. So I'm with Esther on this one, earlier identification for better collaboration.
Thanks, David. And while I've got you, or you've got the floor, just maybe actually a question that is quite close to my heart in terms of elevating the conversation in AI from a project to a portfolio level. How can infrastructure organizations leverage AI and digital technologies to improve project portfolio performance, so across the portfolio rather than the individual projects?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think we've covered some of these points, but I'll just reiterate. There's a big opportunity in helping identifying risks earlier. So that's through predictive models. So we at INSW manage a really large portfolio of projects, or oversee a really large portfolio of projects, and we are a very lean team. So we can't see all the projects at that same level of granularity. We need to apply a risk-based approach. And so using AI and predictive analytics to understand what are the drivers for some projects experiencing underperformance, and then using AI to extrapolate and analyze the entire portfolio and identify where other projects may experience the same issues, elevate those to a watch list. Again, there's no action or anything that's done with it without a human. So it's a watch list that will focus our team's attention where the risks is potentially higher. So that's a use case for us. In terms of identifying systemic risks that impact the portfolio in a much quicker way. We have that structured data, and we can use that to identify risks and projects impacted by common risks. but we also have access to a really deep pool of information, unstructured data, reports, documents that a human would take a significant amount of time to just get around it and analyze. Whereas now with AI, I think we can tap into that unstructured data to identify systemic issues, systemic risks, and quantify the impact better, so that when we go into mitigation and resolution, we are inclusive of all impacted projects. From a portfolio optimization piece as well, so just better decision making, supporting investment prioritization. It's not something we're doing at the moment. We're not using AI for that, but there would be opportunities there to do the same, have a little bit more structured prioritization processes using all of the business case information that's available, all the depth, so that we can get the maximum return on every dollar invested in infrastructure, which is quite critical at the moment, obviously. And then we talked about that opportunity for, administrative productivity gains. So I'm not gonna go there again, but there are big wins there in just checking quality of documentation, are the documents and deliverables meeting the minimum requirements, having these kind of preliminary self-checks so that the humans are involved when all that is ticked, and they can spend their time on the higher value tasks. So these are some of the opportunities I see above and beyond what we've already discussed.
Thank you, David. Anybody else on the panel want to add anything about that AI and digital technology in terms of project portfolio performance?
I might add something into that. I think David highlighted quite a significant part of it at the earlier stage. I think even at the delivery, there are quite a number of successful examples, not in Australia as far as I'm aware, but globally, we have seen some examples that, like, for example, the supply chain, like the number of transformers or substations, and the AI is optimizing the delivery. Like, this substation is not sitting on the critical path across the program because it has been delayed. Hence, the transformer shouldn't go to this site and it should go to the other one. So the sky is limit. Is actually, we just started, the construction is going up and using more and more, but there are a number of examples that successfully the AI can improve the performance, even at the portfolio level.
Thank you, Pedram. Anybody else want to add anything? Or otherwise, I'll come up with a question for Ben.
Hard one.
I think it's a question for you. It's a hard one for Ben.
Let's go hard one.
Let's see. Ben, just from your kind of more oversight role as Infrastructure Australia, have you, or can you share any examples? Have you seen, can you share any examples where machine learning has demonstrably improved the forecasting for project delivery accuracy?
Yeah, that is a tough question to answer. Noting what I said before about the context of IA not delivering projects ourselves, but that doesn't mean that we haven't seen from a systems perspective, and absolutely seconding what David had covered about the portfolio perspective, that there's strong evidence that machine learning can improve forecasting for projects. So not estimating, but forecasting in terms of looking at a collection of projects and studying it to understand what trends there might be, insights and trends there might be in terms of past cost predictability, performances across a portfolio or a system, your schedule confidence, early detection of project delivery risks. So rather than necessarily just looking at precise point estimates or on-site decisions at that early front-end phases, using machine learning to understand where your project might sit. Some people might call that benchmarking. And that is something that I can touch on in my own personal experience. So prior to joining IA, I did spend quite a few years working for Independent Project Analysis, who was and I believe still is the world leader in terms of applying machine learning to understand project performance, benchmarking project performance, not just in terms of what is the industry average cost and schedule performance for a project, but actually, I think much more important, what are the patterns that drive project outcomes from a front end practice perspective? So I think the real value from machine learning that has been proven, actually, and I think somebody said before in their opening statement that machine learning is nothing new in the world of projects, and this is one of those examples where you're not predicting overruns after the fact, but you are helping organizations to understand what can we do differently. What is it that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing, or what is it that we aren't doing that we should be doing? And are our targets for cost and schedule relatively achievable? And if not, is it at all supported by our own planning decisions? I think that is perhaps the best example that I can give in terms of how machine learning specifically has been used to great success. And I hope with advanced models such as large language models, those specific examples just become more commonplace in order to process data to feed forward projects.
Thanks, Ben. And maybe Hester, I'm going to reframe the question slightly, but quite interested to understand your perspective of this forecasting and using technology, machine learning, AI, or anything else as well on, improving the forecasting of project accuracy and project outcomes early in the process. Have you any thoughts on that?
Look, all of us would love a crystal ball when we do projects. Yes, to be able to look at it and know exactly when something is going to go wrong. It always feels that it's always a lag. Yes, well, why didn't we see this coming? Why do I see a variation on a project and I'm only now coming aware of it? It's awesome, like Ben says, that we've got the ability as these tools become more readily available for us, how we are able to put all of that knowledge into a secure space and then actually query it to see whether it can predict it. In one of my previous job roles, not with Oricon, with a different company, we started actually looking at, we took large projects and we looked at how emails were flowing and we tried to predict whether, looking at the way that just communication happened between the different areas in that during that project, whether you could actually predict if something was going to go wrong or if it was actually all on track. Not wanting to put on the black hat that Pedram seems to own for the panel for us today. It is very much around, and I love how Ben put it, AI help digest complexity into insights. So these tools are there. It's becoming more readily available for us on our projects. I don't know whether we have fully unlocked it in the sense that we've got that crystal ball yet, but it is so encouraging to hear that there's definitely a number of things on the go on these major projects to help us understand that. Unfortunately, as we all know, in the real world, no two projects are ever exactly the same, but perhaps there are weak signals that we can start picking up so that we can determine that in a better place in order for a better successful project outcome.
Thanks, Hester. Before I go to the next question to all of you on the panel, anybody want to add anything to those points just made by Ben and Hester?
I might add a quick one. I mean, it's a fantastic discussion, right? Especially when it comes to the forecasting. But we do see that the risk is coming from all the other part. I mean, again, trust. Let me explore the trust a little bit more. The trust is not just about using the tool. It's also when you get the result. Let me put it without mentioning a case study. Let's assume that you use a tool and the AI is suggesting a cost which is 50% more than your current business case. The decision and what you want to do after that, it's quite needs a lot of governance and transparency and accountability, because on one side, if the project it might be 50% more than what you have, it may stop the project completely. On the other side, that might be the reality. So like any other tool, these are practically, and Hester, I love that what you highlighted is in practice, it's also important to understand those steps getting to the result, and that will drive a lot of decisions. So how do we integrate the AI into the decision making, and how we can support that? Because the worst thing is that you get to the scenario that the AI has been used and the result will come up, and then the exec, they don't know what to do with it. Is that, should we ignore it? We cannot ignore it because it has already done, and vice versa. Let's go with that one, which might impact the decision at the high levels.
Thanks, Pedram. And it's a great segue to my next question, actually. So thanks for that setup. To all of you, but maybe we'll start with Hester on this one, going back to where you were just talking about trust, and that rather than bring it back from that crystal ball to actually supporting decision making. How do you ensure that transparency and trust that Pedram was just referring to when using AI recommendations for the decision making? So a bit more practical rather than this crystal ball. Has there any thoughts on that?
So trust comes down to accuracy of what we do. Now, for a business like ours, we design infrastructure that our clients trust that when they built it, it will be safe, it'll stand up, and it'll last. So for us, trust and how we use some of the outputs that might be from these tools very much come down to still the human experience, looking at, and what Pedram says, actually how we, what was in the black box. We cannot, in our business, produce anything that is not trusted. So we still have very strong governance processes that sits around that. For us, it's very much also making sure that as our junior staff enters the business, they continue to have that critical thinking. Who was it that said, was it when David was talking around how we keep the human in the loop, elevate the human thinking, and it doesn't replace the critical thinking? AI should never do that for us because the trust isn't there. And let's face it, even in the future, when these tools might be at a stage where it might create a design for us or a project schedule that we believe we can trust, it should never replace that human critical thinking. So I think the challenge for us as we start using these tools a lot more and as we build trust in the output of the tools is how do we ensure that we always have the experience. I heard a fantastic saying the other day where somebody says, education teaches you the rules, but experience teaches you the exceptions. And that's exactly almost where trust comes in and where we can scrutinize some of these outputs to make sure that whatever it creates is something that we can always have a look at and do a bit of a kicking of the tires just to make sure that it's accurate for us to continue to trust the output.
So to summarize that very quickly, what you just said, when I asked how do you ensure transparency and trust when using AI recommendations for decision making, your fundamental baseline for that, Hester, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is keeping the human in the loop and having an appropriate governance structure around the use of the AI before a decision gets made. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. Just the same question to, let's go to Ben on this one again in terms of that, transparency and trust, and how do you use that in using AI to make definitions? And you can't say what Hester just said. You have to come up with your answer.
Thanks for letting me go first.
That's hard.
But Hester said it so nicely. So maybe I'll just repeat exactly what she said. No, I think trust. It doesn't come from model sophistication, even though certainly some large language models have gone a long way in helping to embed transparency within the model. But the trust does come from transparency in how it is being used, as well as governance. So what I mean by that is you need to be transparent in terms of being clear in what the data is being used in that the model is referencing, or if you are training your own model, what data has been used to train that. Now, I know that's probably a use case that is limited to perhaps very large organizations. But there also needs to be transparency in how the outputs should be interpreted. So what you are presenting, how you intend for the outputs to be interacted with by your audience, and also where human judgment sits in terms of that output. So yes, AI should be used to digest complexity into insight. That's something that I said before. But ultimately, the decisions still need to be clear. There needs to be an audit trail on how any decisions have been arisen or any strong conclusions. But ultimately, the most important thing that I want to state here is that accountability, and I really use that word firmly here. Ultimately, a human needs to be accountable for the output and the decision, and not AI.
Thanks, Ben. Pedram, anything you'd like to add?
I think the team covered it
No?
very, very well. The only thing I can add is that in our team, usually we say it's a triangle. Is a transparency that comes from explainability. In other words, we are able to explain them. The trust comes from a governance, and the confidence comes from keeping human accountable for the final decision. So this might help our audience to think about those three elements of the triangle a little bit easier.
Thank you. Not much room to maneuver there, David. Anything else you want to add?
I think I might go back to the definition of trust. I think there's a component of repeatability, which we haven't discussed about. So to get trust, you need to demonstrate that you achieve the outcome over time, repeatedly, always, actually. And so even if we get all these things we've discussed correct right now, it will still take time to actually have the trust in the process.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Just before we maybe go to some of the audience questions, some of the pre-prepared, pre-submitted questions, and some of the live questions that I can see are coming in. In terms of, I said in my opening statement, we're going to try and give some practical hints and tips. So to each of you, and we'll start with Pedram on this one. What practical first steps would you recommend for organizations who are looking to begin their AI journey in everything to do with projects and construction?
Sure. Thanks, Roger. I mean, I keep this short. I mean, this comes a number of questions as well. I think if I want to recommend something, the most important recommendation is that they start with the uncertainty, not the technology. I mean, we have seen some examples that the AI has been implemented to solve a big problem that eventually, because of something else, failed. Not because of the technology is not available. It might be even because of the culture. It might be because of all other barriers that will come later. It might be change that the organization wasn't ready, and so on and so on. So I usually suggest my clients that they start with the uncertainty, what problem, and even a small uncertainty or a small risk or problem. Just going through them, maybe at the very high level, the 4 steps, identify the high paying decision. For example, you might have some concern for the schedule reliability. It might be the cost overrun. It might be risk visibility. Any of those uncertainties can drive or can be improved by using the AI. So AI usually works best when you tie it into a real decision, not as a generic dashboard, right? The second one is that, and obviously, just again repeat that, it's similar to the maturity of the project management office. You don't set up a PMO at the level 5. There are some processes that you need to, exactly the same, you need to go through that journey, and you need to take the team going through that journey as well. The second one is that usually try to use the AI to augment existing workflows, not replacing them. If you're introducing a new process, it's better to put the process first before you get the AI into it. Just adding them together, it may not be okay. Like starting with layering the AI on top of the current schedule, cost report, or risk register, you can improve the forecasting or early warning rather than just trying to redesign everything from scratch. The third step, try to fix the basic of the data governance, not the data perfection, as I noted earlier. the data, you may not be able to get the data perfection. If AI can be used to improve the decision making or inform decision making, that's probably the opportunity. Clear ownership, consistent structure, agreed definitions, and so on and so on. And the last but not the least is that piloted on a live project is small, measuring the outcome, scale it, what works, and then confidence built when teams see the AI helping them making better decisions, not trying to create existing complexity. So I think those steps probably they're helpful, especially for organizations that they're at the earliest stage of maturity, using AI for risk management and project development and delivery.
Thank you, Pedram. Hester, any thoughts, or what are your recommendations for the practical first steps for organizations looking to begin their AI journey?
Pedram, that was such a beautiful just structure that you've given there, a four-point approach. I think that is very valid. The one thing that I would add that sits on top of that, a fifth point to Pedram's four, would really be a culture of adaptability and agility in your business. These tools, on top of everything that we are asking of our people, especially in a project environment where we are usually, short of time, making sure that what we do it well, is then also to understand that using these tools does change the way that we approach our work. Asking our people to approach a workflow different to what they're usually doing. And especially some of these tools also change so quickly on us that continuous learning, unlearning, adapting, understanding what the tool can do for us today that it couldn't do a month ago does mean that our people have to get used to that constant changing of, oh, I didn't know it could do that. Great. Now I have to remember to actually do that in my day-to-day job. So there's definitely a piece that we have to teach our people to be agile in this approach. And the one thing that people don't do easily is actually change. And I think all of us have experienced that, even when some of the office tools that we use on a day-to-day basis, if an icon suddenly moves to a different part of our screen, it is pretty hard. So we should not forget the impact that some of these tools, even though it is amazing what it can drive as an output for the project, the impact that it has on our people. So that's the fifth one that I would add to Pedram's fourth.
Thanks, Hester. And I agree about the human aspect and reluctance to change, or the difficulty of coping with that. There's nothing I hate more when my phone does a operating system update and it changes the way it functions and all your settings have been erased and you have to put them all in again. It's the most frustrating thing. First world problems, but there you go. Thanks, Hester. Ben, any recommendations from yourself for practical first steps for organizations looking at deploying AI into projects?
Yeah, I feel like I've said this many times, but I'll say it one more time just to hit home the message, and that is to get your basic data readiness in order. So one practical step that I think organizations and people can take, let's say in 30 days, is to work with what you have. I think you'd be surprised by the value of the data that you have on hand. So don't try to change the world immediately. Don't try to reinvent the world. That whole thing about change management, I think, does ring true. So start small. Identify a small set of project data that you do have. Assess its condition. How clean is it? How consistent is it? How complete is it? Make a bit of a plan on how you can address any gaps, but even not, at least you've started in terms of identifying what you have, what the gaps are, what the value is, and then work upwards from there. So, start with that, see what your outputs look like. If it's not great, well, then it's because your data isn't clean, and you can address that as an action. So just keep building up from there. Don't try to change the world straight away, but yes, absolutely. Focus on your data readiness, and the way that you do that is to understand what is the value of your data. We've often spoken about data as an asset, so treat it like you would a physical asset. Do a condition assessment, a value assessment, and then plan and prioritize accordingly.
Thanks, Ben. Interesting concept I got introduced to the other day. Just very quickly about the treat your data as an asset. We won't have time to go in it today, but I just want to leave people with the idea. data and the value of data also diminishes over time. So data that you generate today has great value to you today, maybe tomorrow. Data that was generated 10 years ago, just because it's structured, clean, and organized, it's already old. The value of the data, the world has changed too much to be able to actually use that to make informed decisions or informed decision making today, which was an interesting concept where, we've always talked about big data and data lake and data warehouses and gather your data, keep your data because it's the new oil and all that kind of stuff. It was an interesting concept. So we won't go into that very much because I want to give the floor to David, but something for people to keep in mind that I do believe that that's true. Data and the value of data diminishes as time passes. David, just back to the actual question of practical first steps for organizations looking to begin that AI journey in projects and construction. Any thoughts from yourself?
Yes, definitely. I think just a little plug-in from the New South Wales government perspective. We obviously recognize that data is key to AI, and so we've launched the New South Wales infrastructure digitalization and data policy last year. And so that's asking the agencies to accelerate the take-up of digitalization, but also those good data governance practices within government, which is one of the cornerstones for AI. So that is something that is in focus at the moment for New South Wales government. Now, I think adding to the points that were made earlier, at a more tactical level, or maybe it's not tactical, but at the more organizational level, the idea of creating an enabling environment where people can try and are supported in the use of AI in a safe way, in a fail-safe way, is probably quite important. And so to get that, you probably need top-down leadership. You need your executive to be on board and give you that space. So I would get executive backup in the first 30 days. I would then also really work with procurement and IT just to make sure that, it's not, we don't blocked or have red tape added to these initiatives. And then the cultural change perspective is obviously massive, and we've talked at large about this point. But the enabling environment, relationship with procurement and IT, and creating a fail-safe opportunity with top-down leadership is probably what I would add.
Thanks, David, and some great points made by all of you about some practical first steps, many of which are proven to be the right ones based on experience, both by yourselves, as I've seen, but also the ones we see in practice. Keep it small, start small, be realistic, measure where you start from and where you end up as a process. Don't forget about the human aspect in this. Bring them along, give them a safety net, and make sure all stakeholders, like David said, are involved right from the outside, so as you're not causing any problems further down the track. So great, thanks for that. I think it's about time we went to some questions of the audience. So strap yourselves in. It's going to be a fun ride. We'll start with some of the pre-submitted questions, and I've got a couple here. I'm going to smash together, and I'm going to start with addressing this to Hester. But so Jack from Victoria is the first question that I'm going to use, who is not sure how if he can trust particular, agentic LLM interface models that are out. I won't name any of them, but there's plenty of those out there, and you're working with them. But I like to combine that with a question by Raphael from New South Wales as well, as to what new governance controls or assurance processes are emerging to validate AI-generated insights before they influence project decisions. So again, the trust aspect of Jack, which he questions, versus what new governance control and assurance processes are emerging. Hester?
Yeah, fantastic questions. In a conversation earlier today, one of my colleagues said to me, when you work with an AI model, you cannot actually transfer the accountability of any decisions made to the model. So it comes back to trust. Even if you're an engineer or project controller, project manager that uses any type of automation, you are still accountable for the result of what you put forward as your work product or the output on which decisions will be made. So in terms of, can I trust it? If you as a person that has got the right level of experience can look at the output and see, and it seems reasonable, understanding what the automation, AI tool, any type of model that we use has produced for you, then yes, you can trust it. Why? Because you have looked at it critically and you have determined that it is accurate. But we cannot outsource that accountability from an individual or a business to a machine. To that next question, any new type of governance that has come out as a result of some of these tools and models that we use? I think what we see in our business is actually providing a very clear input set of data that we use in order to feed into some of these models. The machines will run and produce an output, be it a schedule, be it a forecast, be it a budget, or a technical delivery. If we understand what the inputs are, we can validate what the output is. So the two questions do link very beautifully together. What we're doing in a business is wherever we are using models to produce outputs for us, we are requesting our people to clearly note this was the input variables that we used, enabling whomever is doing the checking, the verifying, the approving of that specific output to make sure that the inputs are understood, but that we can also look at it critically to ensure that the output is accurate. So there's a number of things there that we are trying to address, both that trust and accountability, but also making sure that our governance processes keeps up with what we are doing around some of these models.
Thanks, Hester.
It's
one of the questions.
Sorry, Roger.
Sorry,
yeah,
Roger. Go, Pedro.
If I say something, sorry, mate. It's a fantastic. I mean, Hester, thank you for putting that there. It's a fantastic question because it's quite interestingly, one of the trends that we do see now is that for the organizations that they're using AI and they link them quite reasonably well, the hours associated with the juniors are going down. In other words, the junior is spending less time. However, the hours that senior need to spend on it from assurance and governance are going up. So that's another thing I leave everyone to have a think about, that these are some of the practicality of what actually means in terms of the assurance. It means the senior people might need to spend more time because it's not as easy to pick the problems in the schedule or the cost and so on, which previously it was. So that's very interesting one. Thanks, Esther, for that one.
Thanks, Pedro, for that addition. I just wanted to move on to this governance and to the audience. Unsurprisingly, we were talking before we went live in this session around governance and government's role within that. So I'm going to take a question that came through from @Raphael D'Angelo 1345. Although it's like he basically says, from what I'm hearing, it seems AI adoption appears to be a strategic opportunity which may not have a clear governance framework. Now, I just like to extend that maybe a little bit into a little bit of our discussion we had before we started this session. Is like our government doesn't seem to be giving us a framework for this or driving this through legislation in some way or format. So taking those two things together, as in there's no clear governance framework, maybe there is a role there for government. Anybody want to take that question first to see what we can do there to create that framework and maximize the opportunity of AI?
I think I kind of start the conversation. It's probably David and Ben probably best placed to answer from a government perspective. But what we do see, great question. I mean, what we do see is that in Australia, AI, especially in the project delivery, is regulated less by one single law, and it's more on how it interacts with the existing framework, particularly the privacy and data security, governance and accountability. Like I can highlight a few, like for example, from a privacy and data protection, which is quite critical. Any AI that uses project workforce or counterparty data must comply with our Australian Privacy Act or any other relevant guidance, right? Especially around the personal information, explainability, and so on and so on, right? The second is that there is a growing expectation around responsible AI governance. The National AI Plan and some of those, like the standards, like the safety standard and so on, they will make it very clear that organizations must be able to explain how AI is being used. Over the last 6 months, we do see a lot of tenders and a lot of governments that now they're asking the tenderers to provide the use, application, assurance, and governance on AI, not only from a project contractor's perspective, but also from engineering perspective and also professional services, who's accountable, how risk being assessed and identified, and so on. The third, which is quite important as well, is the cybersecurity. And with the panel, we had a big discussion on that earlier today as well. The cybersecurity, the data integrity, these are the areas that AI systems rely on the trusted data. So securing the data supply chain. Most recently, we have seen some tenders that they're specifically asking for insurance on the cybersecurity and AI, use of AI. So my message, and I'd love to hear David and Ben and Hester view on that, is that regulators in Australia at least aren't asking whether you use AI, they're more asking whether you govern it properly, right? AI doesn't necessarily remove the regulatory responsibility, but it definitely raises the bar for transparency, accountability, and assurance, in my view.
Thank you, Pedram. I mean, he called out Ben. Hester, anything you want to add? David?
I'm happy to give the New South Wales perspective. I think, Pedram, you're absolutely right. Like, there are some foundational requirements that remain applicable to AI. Cybersecurity is a perfect example. All the regulatory requirements are still there. I think we've obviously in New South Wales, we've recognized AI opportunities. So there is an AI office that was established last year to ask some of these questions. And at the moment, it's at the strategy level, at the policy setting level. So we would expect that to come down at the operational level soon. And we also have an AI assurance framework. So every investment that has an AI component needs to be assured past a certain threshold. And so that's administrated by Customer Services, Department of Customer Services. So it starts to come into play. In INSW, we've established an AI council for our own more tactical initiatives. So that's not really whole of government, but within our own agency, we've established a council to provide that agency level governance structure. So I think the challenge here is making sure we recognize where AI is just another piece of technology and fits into an existing governance arrangement and not duplicate and add to that. And then if there is a specific need, then make sure that that specific need is captured on that added governance layer. We're all on the journey, I think, with this regard.
Thanks, David. I'm going to add something to that. So the best thing in terms of governance, although it's not technically governance, that I've come across is this called the Sustainable Digitalization Project. You feel free to search that up, but they have 5 principles, and it's not specific to AI. It's related to all technology and using technology, and the 5 principles that they go by and recommend that you always use when you're looking at deploying technology is clarity of purpose. What are you hoping to achieve? Why are you doing this? What are the benefits to humanity? Priority number or principle number 2. So how will it make humans better at what they do? Whole impact, principle number 3. So what are the benefits from or what's the impact on everything? The government, the government, the environment, governance, I should say, the environment, the workplace, the projects, whatever it is. So a whole of impact. Broad responsibility, and we touched on that, and some of the panelists have touched on that. Who is ultimately responsible for it? And then the stakeholder accountability. So what happens? What people do with the data or the decisions made with it, or the input that went into it. There's a lot more information on it. Look it up, Sustainable Digitalization project. As a not an account governance framework, but the best that I have seen so far that may be useful in trying to set up your own governance around the use of technology and AI. Before we get to an end, I'm going to go to another question from the audience. And I'm actually going to take part of the question, not the whole question. The question comes from @David Hajong Kim. Hopefully I said that right. Apologies if I butchered that entirely. His full question are, which AI agent use cases are you actually seeing getting funded and deployed right now, and what skills should one be building today to work on those problems? Now, let's ignore the first part of that question, actually, but it'd be interesting to hear from all of your perspectives, and I'll start with you, Hester. Like, what skills should we, as individuals, but also as organizations, be building today to help with the rollout and adoption of more technology and AI in projects and construction engineering?
Yeah, look, if it comes down to the skills that our people need just to interact at a basic level with some of these tools, I think one of the best advices I've been given is to help our people to understand that when you do query like an AI LLM, is not to use it as Google. Don't search it in the same way that you would Google, but actually do some really easy prompt training for your people. What is interesting, though, in this field of training your people on how to use the tools, we know that there's a whole host of articles out there that shows that companies have invested in this and they haven't necessarily seen the return on their investment. It's a very interesting challenge, I think, how we actually help our people get comfortable and how they use these tools to the maximum. I think it's something where we feel it will naturally come to people. However, as you get more exposure to some of these tools, to get the best out of it is actually how to actually ask it the right questions. And I'm sure all of you have seen that there's beautiful, almost cheat sheets that come up that goes, oh, how actually, if you want to prompt this, or how to create an agent for that. And it's some really useful stuff. And I think that's what, as far as I've seen, is also how you get people excited about the tools. So there's one about training, but the other side of that coin is also how do you make sure that your people understand what is actually available? And it really is it's a beautiful question that ties back to the thread of the conversations that we've had today. If you do have in your business a space with tools where you can actually test and play or use that in a cyber safe and a client safe data space for your business, how do you get your people to use it well? And that's the training question that we've got. And the best way that I've actually seen that is if somebody shows you what they've done and you go, oh, that's awesome, tell me how you've done it, rather than a mass scale rollout of just training that people might not be ready to use or have got the use for today. So it's so my way to answer that question would be get the culture of the business in such a sense that the people are happy to try out those tools. From a business perspective, it's not necessarily rolling out massive training, but it's more making sure that your people understand what's available and then get a couple of super users to show them how it's done. One of the teams in our business actually has almost like we had a digital moment and a well-being moment. They've got an AI moment where somebody just shares how they've actually used a tool in a really great way to unlock some fantastic value. So almost from an organizational perspective, encouraging people where they've seen some really great benefits and then getting them to use that.
Thank you very much. I love some of the examples that you gave there. Especially like the AI, having the AI moment. We're all familiar with the safety moment or the well-being moment, and I do like the AI moment. I love that. That I might take that and steal that from you, Hester. Just back to the question. So, what skills should we be working on? Should we be training? Should we be developing? Ben, any thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, I loved Hester's answer. And we've actually implemented in our team exactly the same thing. We call it a skill share, and inevitably it is about AI, but we have not made it so prescriptive as to be about AI. It's open to our team members to be able to share whatever they find interesting in terms of a skill. So absolutely second that as a way to share knowledge. But the question is about skills. This is an interesting one to answer because it's such a fast moving environment. So as I'm answering it, I'm sure the skill that I'm about to mention might be obsolete. Just a bit of a dramatization there, of course. But the truth is, it is so fast moving, and Hester's hit the nail on the head. Formal training in terms of skills doesn't really cover it in such a fast moving environment. It is much more about culture. And just taking it back to a personal level rather than an organizational level, I would very much assume that the vast majority of our listeners are engineers. And let's not forget that engineers love to take things apart, love to know how they work. So, you know what? Take that approach to learning about large language models and AI. Take the time to understand it. Fix it till it breaks. I've certainly done that many times over in my own personal time, just my own personal entertainment. But by gosh, I've learned so much about how large language models work. So it's not just about a prompt cheat sheet. It's about understanding, why do models work the way they do? Learn about GraphRag and why that works the way that it does, and how that is an answer to the transparency issues that we had before and the biases, etc. Actually go in, lift under the bonnet as much as you can, and just get curious about how it works. And I think the skills that you then will need in a practical sense will fall out of that. The reason I'm saying that, just to reiterate it, is it's such a fast-moving environment. But if you have the basic understanding of how these things work, you will be able to keep up to speed a lot easier.
Thanks for that, Ben. Pedram, any last thoughts for you on the skills we need?
I think I agree. I mean, Hester and Ben covered the individuals. I might look at it from an organization perspective because I think there are some differences. In our experience, if the organization just built only on the technical AI skills, it may be taking the risk that AI remains stuck in the pilot. And what I mean by that, again, Ben touched on the culture. There are a number of areas, like at the organizational level, if I can highlight maybe 5 or 10 big items, like AI literacy, it's just understanding of what AI can and cannot do. Critical thinking and human judgment, that's another important one, that understanding, challenging the output. Data literacy is another one. Responsible AI and ethics. I think a couple of questions that came through the live as well. It's quite important to bias awareness, like fairness, explainability, all those items. It would be great to educate them. AI risk management and governance, again, managing the model risk, security, and so on. Business-led AI use case identification, AI-enabled decision-making. These are all those areas that at the organization level, it needs to be planned for. It doesn't happen organically, I should say. And if it's only focused the organizations that would just focus on the technical AI and just expect the individuals to drive the maturity level in a way that they want to do it, it may not be that efficient. That's the only thing I can add to the picture.
Thank you, Pedram. And I know we're very close to the time, but I do not want to skip David. I'm very keen to hear what his thoughts are on the skills we should be working on. David?
Yes, thanks for that. I'll keep it short, but I think, as Pedram said, like the critical thinking for the user of AI is at the core. I think one element we haven't necessarily talked about is the skills that are a lot more tactical and operational to get the infrastructure in place across the organization. So not necessarily the AI user in the use case we're thinking of, but just the enabling layer. And that's a brand new capability that a lot of agencies may not have. And that will require new people with new skills to put that in place so the AI can actually be run at an enterprise grade level. So that's one point. But then from a user perspective, I think that's absolutely right. We will need the people within our teams to be really more critical around the interpretation of the AI model results, the so what, and then setting the strategy and the direction for the analysis for the use of AI. So what do we want to achieve? That strategic thinking will also be elevated. But yeah, the tactical transition is going to take time and effort. and skills.
Thank you, David. Thanks, David. Look, I think we could have carried on talking about this, and certainly based on a number of questions that we unfortunately didn't get time to get to, we shows that this is a topic of interest. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Amanda, and maybe Engineers Australia can come up with a way to maybe bring this topic to further discussion and continued discussion over time. Amanda, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for Engineers in Australia to organising this and putting this event on, and thanks to the panelists for joining me. But Amanda, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Great session today. And just to answer your question, we are doing a lot on this topic, proving to be very popular. We had almost 1,600 registrations for today's session, so certainly we'll be talking more about it, and that's why I encourage you all, when we put up the link for the feedback survey, it's a very short survey, if you could do that, because it helps us to plan for future sessions. But on behalf of Engineers Australia, I really want to thank our industry partner, Oracle, for being a partner and helping us drive today's event. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you at our next Industry Partners event. Thank you and good afternoon.